The Storting is the supreme legislature of Norway, established in 1814 by the Constitution of Norway. It is located in Oslo. The unicameral parliament has 169 members, and is elected every 4 years based on party list proportional representation in 19 plural-member constituencies. The assembly is led by a president and 5 vice-presidents, the presidium. The members are allocated to 12 standing committees, as well as 4 procedural committees. 3 ombudsmen are directly subordinate to Parliament: the Parliamentary Intelligence Oversight Committee and the Office of the Auditor General. Parliamentarianism was established in 1884. In 2009, qualified unicameralism was replaced by unicameralism, through the dissolution of the 2 chambers, the Lagting and the Odelsting. Following the 2013 election, 8 parties are represented in Parliament: the Labour Party, Conservative Party, the Progress Party, the Centre Party, the Christian Democratic Party, the Liberal Party, the Socialist Left Party, and the Green Party. Since 2013, Olemic Thomsen has been president. History. The Parliament in its present form was first constituted at Eidsvoll in 1814, although its origins can be traced back as early as the 9th century to the Alting, a type of thing, or common assembly of free men in Germanic societies that would gather at a place called the Thingstead and were presided by law speakers. The Altings were where legal and political matters were discussed. These gradually were formalized so that the things grew into regional meetings and acquired backing and authority from the crown, even to the extent that on occasions they were instrumental in effecting change in the monarchy itself. As oral laws became codified and Norway unified as a geopolitical entity in the 10th century, the Lagtings were established as superior regional assemblies. During the mid-13th century, the by then archaic regional assemblies, the Frostating, the Gulating, the Eidsivating and the Borgarting were amalgamated and the corpus of law was set down under the command of King Magnus Lagabøte. This jurisdiction remained significant until King Frederick III proclaimed absolute monarchy in 1660. This was ratified by the passage of the King Act of 1665. And this became the constitution of the Union of Denmark and Norway, and remained so until 1814 and the foundation of the Storting. The Parliament of Norway building opened in 1866. World War II. On 27 June 1940, the Presidium signed an appeal to King Haakon about the desire for his abdication. For president in exile, J. Hambro Luca was one of the 6 who signed. In September 1940, the representatives were summoned to Oslo, and voted in favor of the results of the negotiations between the Presidium and the authorities of the German invaders. However, directives from Adolf Hitler resulted in the obstruction of the agreement of cooperation between Parliament and the occupation force. Qualified unicameralism. Although the Storting has always been unicameral, until 2009 it would divide itself into 2 departments in legislative matters. After elections, the Storting would elect a quarter of its membership to form the Lagting, a sort of upper house, with the remaining 3/4 forming the Odelsting or lower house. The division was also used on very rare occasions in cases of impeachment. The original idea in 1814 was probably to have the Lagting act as an actual upper house, and the senior and more experienced members of the Storting were placed there. Later, however, the composition of the Lagting closely followed that of the Odelsting, so that there was very little that differentiated them, and the passage of a bill in the Lagting was mostly a formality. Bills were submitted by the government to the Odelsting or by a member of the Odelsting. Members of the Lagting were not permitted to propose legislation by themselves. A standing committee, with members from both the Odelsting and Lagting, would then consider the bill, and in some cases hearings were held. If passed by the Odelsting, the bill would be sent to the Lagting for review or revision. Most bills were passed unamended by the Lagting and then sent directly to the king for royal assent. If the Lagting amended the Odelsting's decision, the bill would be sent back to the Odelsting. If the Odelsting approved the Lagting's amendments, the bill would be signed into law by the king. If it did not, then the bill would return to the Lagting. If the Lagting still proposed amendments, the bill would be submitted a plenary session of the Storting. In order to be passed, the bill should have then had the approval of a two-thirds majority of the plenary session. In all other cases, a simple majority would suffice. 3 days had to pass between each time a department voted on a bill. In all other cases, such as taxes and appropriations, the Storting would meet in plenary sessions. A proposal to amend the constitution and abolish the system of Odelsting and Lagting was introduced in 2004 and was passed by the Storting on 20 February 2007. It took effect with the newly elected Storting in 2009. Number of seats. The number of seats in the Storting has varied. From 1882 there were 114 seats, from 1903, 117, from 1906, 123, from 1918, 126, from 1921, 150, from 1973, 155, from 1985, 157. From 1989, 165 and from 2005, 169 seats. Procedure. Legislative. The legislative procedure goes through 5 stages. First, a bill is introduced to Parliament either by a member of government or, in the case of a private member's bill, by any individual representative. Parliament will refer the bill to the relevant standing committee, where it will be subjected to detailed consideration in the committee stage. The first reading takes place when Parliament debates the recommendation from the committee, and then takes a vote. If the bill is dismissed, the procedure ends. The second reading takes place at least 3 days after the first reading, in which Parliament debates the bill again. A new vote is taken, and if successful, the bill is submitted to the King in Council for royal assent. If Parliament comes to a different conclusion during the second reading, a third reading will be held at least 3 days later, repeating the debate and vote, and may adopt the amendments from the second reading or finally dismiss the bill. Royal assent. Once the bill has reached the King in Council, the bill must be signed by the monarch and countersigned by the Prime Minister. It then becomes Norwegian law from the date stated in the Act or decided by the government. Articles 77 to 79 of the Norwegian Constitution specifically grant the King of Norway the right to withhold royal assent from any bill passed by the Storting. However, this right has never been exercised by any Norwegian monarch following the dissolution of the union between Norway and Sweden in 1905. Should the king ever choose to exercise this privilege, Article 79 provides a means by which his veto may be overridden. If a bill has been passed unaltered by 2 sessions of the Storting, constituted after 2 separate successive elections and separated from each other by at least 2 intervening sessions of the Storting, without a divergent bill having been passed by any Storting in the period between the first and last adoption, and it is then submitted to the King with a petition that His Majesty shall not refuse his assent to a bill which, after the most mature deliberation, the Storting considers to be beneficial. It shall become law even if the royal assent is not accorded before the Storting goes into recess. Organization. Presidium. The Presidium is chaired by the President of the Parliament, in Norway called the Storting. Consists of the President and the 5 Vice Presidents of the Storting. Standing committees. The members of Parliament are allocated into 12 standing committees, of which 11 are related to specific political topics. The last is the Standing Committee on Scrutiny and Constitutional Affairs. The standing committees have a portfolio that covers that of 1 or more government ministers. Other committees. There are 4 other committees that run parallel to the standing committees. The Enlarged Committee on Foreign Affairs consists of members of the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and Defense. the Presidium and the parliamentary leaders. The committee discusses important issues related to foreign affairs, trade policy and national safety with the government. Discussions are confidential. The European Committee consists of the members of the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and Defence and the parliamentary delegation to the European Economic Area and the European Free Trade Area. The committee conducts discussions with the government regarding directives from the European Union. The Election Committee consists of 37 members, and is responsible for internal elections within the Parliament, as well as delegating and negotiating party and representative allocation within the Presidium, standing committees and other committees. The Preparatory Credentials Committee has 16 members and is responsible for approving the election. Appointed agencies. 5 public agencies are appointed by Parliament rather than by the government. The Office of the Auditor General is the auditor of all branches of the public administration and is responsible for auditing, monitoring and advising all state economic activities. The Parliamentary Ombudsman is an ombudsman responsible for public administration. It can investigate any public matter that has not been processed by an elected body, the courts or within the military. The Ombudsman for the Armed Forces is an ombudsman responsible for the military. The Ombudsman for Civilian National Servicemen is responsible for people serving civilian national service. The Parliamentary Intelligence Oversight Committee is a 7-member body responsible for supervising public intelligence, surveillance and security services. Parliament also appoints the 5 members of the Norwegian Nobel Committee that award a Nobel Peace Prize. Administration. Parliament has an administration of about 450 people, led by Secretary-General Ida Boressen, who assumed office in 2012. She also acts as Secretary for the Presidium. Party groups. Each party represented in Parliament has a party group. It is led by a group board and chaired by a parliamentary leader. It is customary for the party leader to also act as parliamentary leader, but since party leaders of government parties normally sit as ministers, governing parties elect other representatives as their parliamentary leaders. The table reflects the results of the September 2013 election. Elections. Members to Storting are elected based on party lists proportional representation in plural member constituencies. This means that representatives from different political parties are elected from each constituency. The constituencies are identical to the 19 counties of Norway. The electorate does not vote for individuals but rather for party lists, with a ranked list of candidates nominated by the party. This means that the person on top of the list will get the seat unless the voter alters the ballot. Parties may nominate candidates from outside their own constituency, and even Norwegian citizens currently living abroad. The Assent method is used for allocating parliamentary seats to parties. As a result, the percentage of representatives is roughly equal to the nationwide percentage of votes. Still, a party with a high number of votes in only one constituency can win a seat there even if the nationwide percentage is low. This has happened several times in Norwegian history. Conversely, if a party's initial representation in Storting is proportionally less than its share of votes, the party may seat more representatives through leveling seats, provided that the nationwide percentage is above the election threshold, currently at 4%. In 2009, 19 seats were allocated via the leveling system. Elections are held each 4 years, normally on the second Monday of September. Unlike most other parliaments, the Storting always serves its full 4-year term. The constitution does not allow snap elections. Substitutes for each deputy are elected at the same time as each election, so by-elections are rare. 2013 election result. Following the elections on the 9th of September 2013, the Red-Green coalition of the Labour Party, the Socialist Left Party and the Centre Party lost their previously held majority. Coalition talks were initiated between the Conservative, Progress, Christian Democratic, and Liberal parties. The result of the negotiations were a minority cabinet consisting of the Conservative and Progress parties, with Ernest Solberg as Prime Minister. The Liberal and Christian Democratic parties decided to remain in opposition but entered into a confidence and supply agreement with the Solberg cabinet. Members. The Parliament has 169 members. If a Member of Parliament cannot serve, a deputy representative serves instead. In the plenary chamber, the seats are laid out in a hemicycle. Seats for cabinet members in attendance are provided on the first row. Behind them, the members of Parliament are seated according to county, not party group. Viewed from the President's chair, Ostag's representatives are seated near the front, furthest to the left, while the last members are seated furthest to the right and at the back. 1980s present list of members of the Parliament of Norway, 1981 to 1985. List of members of the Parliament of Norway, 1985 to 1989. List of members of the Parliament of Norway, 1989 to 1993. List of members of the Parliament of Norway, 1993 to 1997. List of members of the Parliament of Norway, 1997 to 2001. List of members of the Parliament of Norway, 2001 to 2005. List of members of the Parliament of Norway, 2005 to 2009. List of members of the Parliament of Norway, 2009 to 2013. Code of conduct. Unparliamentary language includes one-night stand, smokescreen government, pure nonsense, Molbo politics, may God forbid, lie, and Somfanden Lesebibellen. Building. Since 5 March 1866, Parliament has met in the Parliament of Norway building at Karl Johans gate 22 in Oslo. The building was designed by the Swedish architect Emil Victor Langlet and is built in yellow brick with details and basement in light grey granite. It is a combination of several styles, including inspirations from France and Italy. The building was designed by Emil Victor Langlet.